In the early 1600s, the land that would become the United States possessed dense forests, deep rivers, and vast deposits of raw materials. Yet the European colonists living there were fighting starvation on a daily basis. The natural resources were abundant, but the ability to harness them at scale was completely missing. They faced a severe shortage of actual money. Without a central banking system or a reliable currency, colonists resorted to localized barter. A farmer might trade dried tobacco leaves or animal skins for tools and clothing. It was a fragmented economy where trade rarely extended beyond a few miles. To fix the coin shortage, local governments and individual colonies printed their own paper notes to act as stand-ins for value. The result was financial chaos. Dozens of varying currencies floated around, meaning a note issued in Massachusetts might be completely worthless in Virginia. No one could confidently price goods or invest in long-term trade. That friction finally ended in 1792 when the newly formed United States government established the U.S. dollar. By standardizing money across state lines, they created a baseline of trust. A merchant in New York could finally do reliable business with a farmer in Georgia. But a trusted currency only works if you can actually move it, and the goods it buys, across the map. The American continent was thousands of miles wide. Raw resources and financial capital were separated by endless forests and mountain ranges. The dollar was stable, but the physical network required to connect the economy did not exist. The solution in the 1800s was brute force. The Industrial Revolution arrived as a violent, rapid conquest of geography. Railroads sliced through the wilderness, and enormous steel plants fired up to produce the tracks. For the first time, millions of tons of coal, timber, and iron could be pulled out of the earth and shipped directly to urban centers in days rather than months. This sudden influx of raw materials required intense labor to process. Millions of immigrants poured into the country seeking factory work, causing cities to expand outward at breakneck speed. Labor shifted rapidly from scattered rural farms to massive production floors. Complex overhead pulley systems and mechanized assembly lines allowed workers to process goods at a scale that manual laborers never could. This new physical infrastructure conquered the continent's geography. But laying thousands of miles of steel track and building enormous factories introduced a critical new problem. The sheer cost of these continental megaprojects far exceeded the wealth of any single individual. A growing nation now faced an enormous funding gap. They had the raw materials and the labor, but they needed immense amounts of upfront cash to actually build the physical network. To solve this, the country required a way to pool scattered individual wealth into massive reservoirs of usable capital. Large-scale, centralized banking emerged to aggregate those localized savings under one roof. They popularized an abstract financial tool, the stock market. Corporations divided the total cost into thousands of affordable pieces of ownership. These savings from ordinary citizens funneled back to corporations, giving them the exact capital needed to build and expand. A new class of financial titans began looking past the physical machines. J.P. Morgan prioritized the control of the banks themselves, operating on the premise that whoever governed the movement of capital effectively governed every factory and railroad in the country. Wall Street became the financial engine necessary to drive the physical one. By wiring everyday investors directly to corporate innovators, the United States locked itself into a cycle of compounding economic growth. Within a few decades, an agrarian society of localized barter had evolved into a highly centralized, capital-driven powerhouse. The financial sector grew massive, crowding the physical streets of New York with brokers, bankers, and a staggering volume of trade. Because this intertwined architecture of physical industry and financial capital worked so efficiently, America rapidly became the primary destination for global investment. These internal networks were incredibly robust. Following the devastation of World War II, the surviving American industrial and financial systems became the unquestioned foundation for global trade. But this exact architecture introduced a profound vulnerability. Because the entire system relies on the constant flow of shared capital and accumulated debt, it requires absolute, unshakable public trust to function. When that trust evaporates, the resulting collapse is devastating. A fully networked economy means that a failure in the financial sector instantly cascades into the physical one, wiping out savings, shuttering factories, and destroying livelihoods. The dual networks built during the Industrial Revolution successfully conquered a continent and created the richest economy in history. However, in doing so, they permanently wired the nation with the complex, interconnected financial risks that define our modern world.